Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Daniel Stewart on the line, and he's president of Stewart Leadership. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be with you, Adam. Thanks.
All right, Daniel. So excited to get into today's topic. And for the audience that have been watching me for a long time, they know that I love promoting authors, but this is a special treat and a special event. So your book, Lead Now, a personal leadership coaching guide for results-driven leaders, is now in its second edition, 10 years later. I just want to say, hey, congratulations on the book.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, Daniel. So we're going to do a deep dive into this book, of course, and then we'll also be getting into Stewart Leadership. I want to learn more about your business and how you're helping leaders out there. But before we do that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Daniel, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Daniel, what mission matters to you?
Oh, I love the question and the purpose here. You know, as I reflect on that, what I would really want to emphasize is the disproportionate impact that a leader has on a team, on an organization, and recognizing that impact and understanding how to leverage it in good ways. We've all lived through such fascinating past couple of years. And as the personal and the professional have been blurred even further, it matters how we lead, not just at work, but also at home, and respecting and helping people bring their best self to work each day. So the impact of leaders, and that's really what we do every day, and trying to be able to provide tools to help leaders be their best and send messages and create an environment where others can do the same for themselves also.
It's awesome. Love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs on the line to share why they do what they do, like what excites them about getting out there in the marketplace and making a difference. And you're obviously helping a lot of leaders out there. So before we go further into the book and into Stewart Leadership, I mean, how did all this get started for you? Like how this path to entrepreneurship and working with people to help them become leaders, how did all that start?
I love it. So I'll get personal for a second, because we know any real personal change, it gets really deep. So for me, it's a family thing. My dad started the business back in 1980. And so I've grown up with it, with my brothers and I mean, dinner table conversations, we would talk about leadership theory. I remember as a ninth grader, and I don't say this very often, as a ninth grader, I wrote out like an outline for a management book, called it Common Sense Management, because I just
Wait a minute. This was in ninth grade?
I know. It sounds like a dork, but hey, but yes, this is.
I'm trying to get senior level leaders to do that right now, and you're doing this in ninth grade.
It was just stuff that interested me. I grew up with this. Yeah. I will say I didn't necessarily intend to work with my dad per se. Love him, and I learned a ton. But I found myself interested in similar things. So I went and I got my master's in this area, organization development, leadership, worked internally for many, many years. And then over 10 years ago, my dad and I wrote a successful leadership book, Lead Now, the first edition. And that was at the point where I just kind of looked around, looked at the heavens, like, is this the time that I leave the corporate world? And it was. And it's been a great ride with my dad. And then my brother, who is a PhD psychologist, has joined us. And now today we have over 35 coaches and consultants and business development folks throughout the world. And it's a fantastic journey. So there you go. It's very personal, but that's where it goes.
Wow, that's what an amazing story. And in ninth grade to be doing something like that and already be wrapping your head around this. I can't even imagine like what those Turkey Day like conversations were like around the holidays, and you're sitting there talking about leadership. I feel like the rest of the table that wasn't on the inner circle are like, what did I get into? Like, we're talking about leadership.
Am I in the right room? What am I doing here? Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. So there's a point that you brought up when you decided to maybe leave the corporate world and go that entrepreneurial route. I feel like right now there's a lot of individuals out there that, whether it's their employment's changing, whether the opportunity out there is changing, or maybe their heart's changing and they want to go out and do something on their own. So leaders of varying, let's say, levels of experience and different points in their career. Like, if you could take yourself back to that time when you said, okay, is it time to finally make the jump to, go out on your own and to, join a business? What was that like? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that are contemplating some of that same thought process right now.
I love it. It's a great, great question. And, I'll frame it up this way. Several years ago, I heard from a great colleague that anytime you're trying to figure out a next step, you want to answer two questions. One is, what are you running from? And the other question is, what are you running to? And so at that point, though I didn't necessarily use those two exact questions, that really summed up a lot of what helped me decide that I wanted to leave and go out on my own with my dad, because I had really good answers to both of those questions, not just one or the other. And for me, yes, a big risk and a lot of preparation. And I will say one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give as people are considering this, and what I did a lot of, was networking, learning from everybody you could possibly talk to, asking so many questions and doing a lot of listening. And at the end, always saying, who else would you recommend that I talk to? Because it's a perpetual desire to learn. And of course, in what I do, the consulting coaching space, it really matters to practice the art of listening and the art of asking great questions, because also that's what great leaders will do. So several different things wrapped up around that one for you, Adam.
No, that's great. And I know when I made that jump, I was not necessarily asking these questions. I was one of those accidental entrepreneurs, I would say. I never really thought about going that route. And it just was one of those things that kind of sucked me up. So I always love to get that insight of what different people went through when they kind of made that transition, because I feel like everybody, there's times when some of us are looking at, programs like this, or looking at other entrepreneurs, and we're like, we're supposed to have it all figured out. And to me, like, no matter how much you do a lot of preparation, of course, you do your planning, you do everything else, but there's always those things that were unexpected. And that's kind of the beauty of the journey. And there's always those like, wow, wasn't expecting that to happen. I mean, even in this business for us at Mission Matters, like, I didn't even know what a podcast was when I started to kind of down this route. I didn't know any of it. You couldn't have told me I went to school for podcasting. I don't think it was around back then, right? So
Absolutely.
Daniel, I want to switch it up a bit now. I want to get into the book. So Lead Now, you mentioned this is the second edition, first edition written, let's say about 10 years or over 10 years ago. Let's go back to the first edition for a moment. I don't mean content, but I just mean the thought process of what you and your dad were thinking about when you released the first edition. Like, why a book on leadership? Why Lead Now?
Yeah, a couple of things led us to want to create the initial book. One is we want people to be able to feel empowered to own their own career, to own their own leadership development, because we believe strongly that leadership skills is a distinct skill set. It's not just something that you tack on to, say, operational management or marketing. No, it's a distinct skill set, and people need to be able to have the tools to own their development in that space. And the second was really then defining what kind of tool is most helpful for leaders. Most leaders are time-starved. We're running a mile a minute. We're trying to do so many different things. How can we create a tool that's bite-sized chunks? And it's either not too sophisticated or academic or complex that it takes semesters to understand, but yet it also isn't so simple that where's the research? Where's the backing? Where's that middle ground? And so that's what led us to create the Lead Now leadership development model, as well as the Lead Now book, to provide research-based, proven, and simple, straightforward tools and tips so that a leader can pick it up and use it. And lastly, I'll just mention, we wanted to write a book not meant to be read, but meant to be used. And so that's the whole idea, is to help leaders be able to accomplish results. And that's the tool. And that's what led us to create the book.
So now, I mean, kind of fast forwarding 10 years now, I'm guessing, and you let me know if I'm off. It was this last 10 years a bit of just refining and perfecting the model and adding to it and tweaking and doing all the things that, you get from feedback of 10 years working with people, like that's led now to this second edition. Has this been kind of a refining process, or like, let me into your mind and what went into that?
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it up. We've worked with thousands and thousands of leaders over the last 10 years.
Thousands. That's amazing.
Thousands.
First off.
And so working with that many, and then looking at the marketplace around us. I mean, 10 years ago, yes, internet, email, but were we texting? Were we using Teams as much? Were we using all sorts of new tech? No, I mean, all of this just keeps on evolving. And also the idea of planning. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, we would actively plan 5 years out. Today, it's 1 year, maybe 3. And what does that mean to manage constant change? So all of these implications have dramatic differences for leaders today. And so taking on all of the things we've learned with working with leaders, as well as the new marketplace realities, and building it in and bolstering and strengthening the tips and tools within the book. Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you've taken away over these years, really just working with that many people and that many organizations? Like, what are some of the things that, as you kind of went back into, I know at some point you opened the hood and you're like, okay, we're gonna look back into this book. We're gonna release a second edition. You open up the hood and you find some maybe unexpected things there. Like, what are some of the things that you found in that process of going to the second edition?
Yeah, it's been a fun experience. One of the things that has stood out the most is people want to leverage strengths, and we are a big proponent of leveraging strengths. We also find sometimes that you can do that too much. You can have your strengths and you can just go a little too far, maybe in a spirit of saying, but that's me, or that I can't change. And we say, okay, let's leverage strengths, but also let's clarify, what does it look like when it's too much or overused? And so that was actually something that we put into this book, because the book is based around 21 different leadership dimensions or competencies. And so as you look at each of these dimensions, we wanted to be very clear as to what each look like and what it looks like when it's not being done and what it looks like when it's being done too much. And so if you take, for example, effective communication, or strategic thinking, or delegation, what does it look like when it's just right? What does it look like to be able to balance the sense of humility and learning while also leveraging others around you and not going too much? So that was something that we learned over the past many years, actually, and have adopted more into this book to help leaders as they develop.
What level of leader would you say that this book is appropriate for? Is this appropriate for maybe somebody that's just getting started out? Is it only for like C-level execs? Like, where would you place this at in terms of somebody's tool in their tool belt?
Yeah, we designed it so it is applicable for leaders at all levels. And we've designed it so that the tips for each of the 21 dimensions, they range tremendously. For those that may just be starting out, they can look at it and go, oh, fantastic. Yes, let's do that. And then perhaps those who are more senior, they've been around a while, and there are tips that they can look at and go, oh yeah, maybe I've learned that before, but dang it, I've totally forgotten it. Or I'm in a different context right now. And that's why I say it's for various different levels of leaders, because the different contexts and situations may be so varied that different tips are needed to be emphasized at different times. And we all can forget. And we have learned so much, but let's get something again so that as a ready reference to apply. So first-time manager, yes, but we will use this all the way up to a CEO or a C-suite executive so that they can leverage and also set the example as they role model it for others in the organization to utilize resources like this as well.
Yeah, context is so important. I mean, you read a book like this on leadership and pre-pandemic, then post-pandemic, you read it and you just have a different set of eyes, a different lenses that you may view the world with, and everything's changed. So I love that you said that sometimes you also forget things or you forget like what you already knew. And that's one of the big things about kind of relearning, especially when we think about a theme such as important and large as leadership. I want to change it up a bit for a moment. I want to go into Stewart Leadership. We'll come back to the book. I also want to, of course, get into the model itself of training, but let's take a moment and let's talk about Stewart Leadership. So tell me a little bit more about the company, please.
Absolutely. And it's really a global human capital consulting, coaching, and training firm. And we find that leadership is usually the place to start, but not necessarily end. Because we can develop ourselves as leaders, but leaders need to be most effective, again, in certain contexts, in certain cultures. We need to consider the structures and processes and systems in which we work. So as a result, we really do four things. First is leadership development, a lot of coaching and custom programs. Second is teaming. We work a lot, especially with executive senior teams, to help create that level of cohesiveness. Third, we do a lot of change management and organization alignment, everything from creating inclusive cultures to strategic planning and change management and organization design. And fourth, around talent, a lot of succession planning, talent programs, career management, the employee experience, as well as competency development, all in a spirit because these all work together. And a leader cannot just be successful on their own. They need to work within a system, a culture, a team. And so that's where we support all aspects. I often will break it down by simply saying, we help address and solve people problems. And there are lots of people problems. So let's frame it up in positive ways and build strong, beneficial cultures, teams, and leaders to help align people to doing great things.
What type of companies do you find normally get the most value out of working with you and your team, whether it's size of company or like, is this only for enterprise? Does small business fit into this equation? Are you industry agnostic? Do you work with maybe certain industries more than others? Give us a little bit of a flavor for who this works best for.
Yeah, what we find is it's not so much the size of the organization. We often work with small to mid-sized firms all the way to large firms. But what matters the most is when an organization wants to value the human touch, the human connection. When they value a sense of culture or team, that's who we partner most with, especially when they are wanting to grow. Oftentimes, we really become the growth partner, enabling organizations to scale their human capital, their people, their leaders, so they are not just able to produce things well today, but they're able to prep and scale and accelerate for the future. And so that's really who we work with. It really does not matter the industry. You name the industry, and we have clients. We have worked in that, whether that's manufacturing or healthcare or government contracting, information. I mean, you name it, insurance, banking, that's really less significant. It's more so, do you have leaders? Do you care about their development? And are you trying to grow and you recognize that the people have such a huge impact to accomplishing your strategies?
Let's go further into the Lead Now model. So we've talked a little bit about the book, of course. Let's go further into the model itself. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's been created over actually 45 years of research and consulting work, and really over 8,000 different client 360 assessments we're able to use to develop what are the four essential elements that leaders need to be most successful in. And then within each of these four, that's where we were able to identify specific dimensions. And you add up those dimensions, and those are 21 leadership dimensions. And I often say it's a bit like a buffet in some way. you have these 21 leadership dimensions out, and a leader needs to go through and go, okay, I need a little bit more on decision making. I need a little bit more on innovation and coaching. And then we'll say, fantastic, let's build an action plan around it. And now go do it. And so you build on this model so there's consistent language and there's deep research and proven approaches. And then you get specific to build leadership muscle in these different specific leadership areas that everybody needs to develop in as a leader. So that's some background there for you.
And you mentioned the word customize or customization multiple times. And now I see, now that we're learning more about your model, I think I get a little bit more about what you mean. So meaning this isn't a one size fits all program. It seems like within your model, this can be really tailored to whatever an organization needs. Am I off on this or?
Oh, spot on. And that's one of the things that we love to do the most, which is go in and listen to a client, whatever their needs are, and customize and build what they need, not just what we think they need. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we'll start with a lead now model and we'll say, okay, out of these 21 dimensions, what are the 3 dimensions that matter the most to help you accomplish your strategy for the future? And so they might look at it, strategic thinking or team development. And that's where we can then dive deeper and say, all right, let's talk about how to build those skills and to reinforce those skills throughout the organization. And we can do that by level within the organization as well. Because by level, what are the 3 that matter the most for entry level? What are the 3 that matter the most for mid-managers? What are the 3 that matter the most for, and so forth? All relying upon a common model. And we have assessments and a whole leadership training program that we can then customize to help support. So yeah, customizing it is where it's at so that each individual can have what they need to bring their best self every day.
Tell me a little bit more about the delivery. Is this done in person, on site? Is it remote? Combination of the two? Like, how does the delivery part of this work?
Yeah, great question. Getting into the mechanics. I love it. And so in this day and age, everything can be done virtual and or in person and or remote. And so it's really not, and it should not be about our preference. It's about what is best for the client. I mean, we have clients who are global. And so we may have sessions at midnight or at 8 o'clock, and it might be an hour, it might be 4 hours. Yeah. And then there's some group coaching in between, there are assignments linking back to their actual work, and there's videos, there's micro-learning, there's all sorts of elements that can be done face-to-face, virtually, remote. The point is to sync up learning to where the performance matters for the client and for the leader. And that's what matters the most. And that's where we love to go in and go, let's figure out what that is and meet you where that is.
And I'm sure that, and I know every client journey is going to be slightly different, right? Based off customization, based off of what they need, based off of the size of the organization. But what does the overall like user journey look like? So meaning I'm watching this right now, I'm in the audience and I'm like, oh, you know what? I want to go check out what's going on at Stewart Leadership. This sounds interesting to me. So now they make the call or they connect with you and your team. Like, what does that user journey look like?
I love it. So it's really one of 2 ways. And sometimes it can be combined, but typically one of 2 ways. The first is through one-on-one coaching or executive coaching. And usually it's 6 to 12 months to be able to then find and match the right executive coach with the individual leader. And there's an assessment process and ultimately a very specific action planning process all around Lead Now. So it's synced up with their boss and the organization, and people are held accountable to be able to further develop in a very specific, tailored way to each person. And then the second way is at the group level. And we have Lead Now programs throughout the country and in fact, the world that usually are 4, 6, 12 months long. And they're a combination of assessment, of perhaps even group coaching, and usually some group learning sessions, and then action planning and on-the-job work, and as well as oftentimes video or micro-learning as well. We believe in a very integrated approach so that people can get the skill development that they need in the way and in the moment that matters most, while also having accountability and follow-up. And that's where it's fun to then design and say, what does it make sense for your organization? So 2 different ways of going about it.
And so the follow-up. So I know sometimes people do, you may go through an executive coaching course, or you may do some things. And like you said earlier, especially with the book, like, you learn something, then you forget it, right? Or it changes, or the context changes, like things change. Like, how does the follow-up and how does kind of the maintenance work on working with something like this?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. We believe so strongly that leadership development, or frankly, any kind of learning, should not be event-based. It is not just a single time you go, you get the binder, and then you forget, and you put it on the shelf. That's why both ways that I was suggesting, that executive coaching or also more of the programs, it is beyond event-based. It is to embed and develop habits. And it's not just individually, it's also synced up with their boss and the different systems and processes, so that we can then help continue to sustain the development that's learned moving forward. It's not done in a vacuum. It is continually connected and reinforced. And then oftentimes we have long-term relationships with clients to then identify, okay, 6 months later, 12 months later, how can we help you internally even to be able to create and reinforce these, to have regular development conversations, and to continually challenge and help people feel a little uncomfortable, frankly, so that they can keep working toward developing themselves.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, I just have to say, it's been great having you on the show to learn more about Lead Now, about the book, about the model, about Stewart Leadership. Sitting around the dinner table at your home, talking about leadership, and you even writing in 9th grade. The model of management for leadership. I'm kind of blown away by all of that. So I just have to ask. So what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the book promotion? What's next for Stewart Leadership?
Yeah, what's so fun is there has been over the past 10 years, and especially just in the past many months, such a fantastic reception as folks continue to dive in and take this in. And that is what we are so focused on being able to respond to and deliver. We continue to grow. We have consultants and coaches throughout the country as well as throughout the world. And so we are wanting to continue to help support leaders wherever they are at, develop. And that is our mission. And that is what we'll continue to do as we keep on growing and providing solutions for leaders and teams and organizations.
And Daniel, if somebody wants to follow up to connect with Stewart Leadership, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Easiest way, our website, stewartleadership.com. We've created it so that it defines and explains all the different services. You can reach out at any point at info@stewartleadership.com. And so please reach out. We have I've mentioned our fantastic team. They can reach out and have an exploratory conversation anytime.
Perfect. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so people can just click on it and head right on over and connect with you and your team. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, we're a platform that's all about bringing on entrepreneurs and executives and experts and having them share why they do what they do. What's their mission? Like, why are they out there in the marketplace trying to make a difference? If that's content that you're into and that sounds interesting to you, we definitely welcome you to hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Daniel, congrats again on the 2nd edition of Lead Now. I'm wishing you much more continued success, and thanks again for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Adam. All the best. Thanks.